In April 2025, President Trump declared a trade emergency and unleashed what critics call the most ambitious U.S. tariff campaign in modern history. A 10% tariff baseline, followed by country-specific levies reaching up to 50%, impacting about 68 to 70 nations. Global markets trembled, businesses reeled, legal experts filed lawsuits. This video unpacks the timeline, rates, impacts, legal battles, and what lies ahead. Rising trade deficits and calls to protect U.S. manufacturing led Trump to order a policy review demanding reciprocal trade measures. Trump declared a national emergency under IEEPA. He imposed a 10% blanket tariff across all imports, effective April 5th. Then, he announced a second phase. A week later, country-specific duties between 10% and 50% targeting trade partners he deemed unfair. Higher tariffs began for those in IEEPA's Annex 1 list, including India, China, Brazil, and Switzerland. Some countries with fewer deficits received only the baseline rate. So Trump claimed tariffs would tighten global reciprocity, boost American manufacturing, and generate revenue to fund infrastructure projects. A second executive order, titled Further Modifying the Reciprocal Tariff Rates, reaffirmed IEEPA authority and resized many rates. The set effective date was August 7th, except for Canada's, which was enforced immediately on August 1st at 35%. About 69 countries on Annex 1 would move beyond the 10% baseline. So, here's a snapshot of select countries and their assigned rates. Countries like Australia, the United Kingdom, and Japan received a baseline of 10%, while others remain at the standard rate pending negotiations. Some countries have exemptions. Belarus, Cuba, North Korea, and Russia are exempted due to existing sanction regimes or simply a lack of trade. The average United States tariff rate soared from 2.3% in 2024 to 18% in 2025. Global markets really plunged. Dow fell about 1.2%, S&P around 1.6%, and the Nasdaq dropped roughly 2.2%. Inflation rose modestly to 2.6% in June, all amid some weak job data. Higher United States tariffs translate to increased costs at checkout, with the estimated household burden landing somewhere between $2,400 and $3,800 per year in added expenses. Business leaders are, warning about supply chain chaos and a lack of clarity on how tariffs are actually being applied, especially when it comes to trans-shipped goods. The small package exemption has been abolished, so now, foreign shipments under $800 from China are hit with a 54% duty. In Brazil, repeated disputes over the prosecution of Bolsonaro have triggered 50% penalties on select goods, even in cases where trade was balanced. In Canada, 35% tariffs were imposed right away due to concerns about fentanyl. When it comes to steel, autos, copper, and Venezuelan oil, tariffs are being levied under different statutes, like Section 232, Section 301, and IEEPA, ranging from 25 to 50%. In the case of VOS selections, Incorporated versus the United States, the Court of International Trade actually ruled that Trump had exceeded his authority under IEEPA, which, invalidated the tariffs. A permanent injunction was issued. Oral arguments were held on July 31st with 11 judges presiding. Many of them seemed pretty skeptical that the IEEPA actually allows for these broad tariff powers. The big questions here are, can trade deficits really be considered an unusual and extraordinary threat, and does the IEEPA even implicitly permit the imposition of tariffs? A ruling against Trump could end up overturning billions of dollars in tariffs already collected. And honestly, it could erode the president's authority over trade policy as a whole. Some experts are already floating fallback legal strategies, like using the Trade Act of 1974, or maybe Section 232 or 301 statutes, if the IEEPA is struck down. This case might even reach the Supreme Court around Thanksgiving, potentially shifting the power balance in U.S. trade policy. Tariffs aimed at Brazil and Canada seem, well, pretty politically motivated, used as leverage in negotiations over Venezuelan oil and drug trafficking issues. Critics argue that this really highlights how arbitrarily these measures can be implemented. Countries like India, Vietnam, the European Union, and South Korea are, scrambling to negotiate exemptions or maybe just settle for bilateral muted tariffs. Some of them actually secured deals with tariffs around 15 to 20% instead of facing the highest rates. Economists are warning about, some pretty striking parallels to the 1930s Smoot-Hawley era, which actually came right before a global depression. Critics are saying this policy amounts to a global protection racket, basically coercing weaker nations and honestly destabilizing long-standing trade norms. So, here's what's coming up. On August 7th, adjusted reciprocal tariffs are set to kick in globally. By August 12th, China-specific tariffs of 34 to 54% will resume if a bilateral deal doesn't happen. Then, looking ahead to late 2025 and 2026, additional reviews could actually expand tariffs to sectors like semiconductors, solar, drones, and pharmaceuticals. And there's a legal ruling expected by fall. Courts may either invalidate or uphold Trump's authority. From Roosevelt-era emergency powers all the way to a post-2025 trade landscape with tariffs between 10 and 50%, Trump's import levies really do represent a seismic shift. Some folks see this as economic boldness, while others are calling it reckless global isolation. Markets are wary, businesses are unsteady, and the courts may yet redefine presidential trade authority. What happens next, just like the fate of this whole tariff regime, could shape the future of global economics for years to come.